A poor black girl was mocked and told to sing. Seconds later, the entire school went silent. The spotlight was brutal, hot, blinding, and merciless. 13-year-old Avery Coleman stood frozen center stage at Hillcrest Academy, her small frame silhouetted against a sea of polished faces. Over 500 students filled the gilded auditorium. Almost all of them were white. Many were smirking. A few whispered. One laughed outright. Her mouth went dry. Her knees trembled. This was supposed to be a celebration of excellence. A winter showcase featuring the school's best and brightest. But to Avery, it felt like an execution. A moment ago, Savannah Blake, the school's most adored golden girl, had smirked at Avery from the wings, and stage whispered, "Let's see if Scholarship Girl can actually carry a note." The laughter from her circle was low but intentional. Avery heard every syllable. She was never meant to be here, not at this school, not on this stage, and certainly not in the spotlight. Then something happened. Avery closed her eyes, and she remembered. She remembered her grandmother's hands, guiding her through scales in their tiny apartment. She remembered the worn records, the scent of lavender, and the words whispered like a spell. "Your voice is your truth. Sing it loud enough, and the world has to listen." When Avery opened her eyes again, the fear hadn't disappeared, but something deeper had taken its place. Fire. Not the hot stage kind, the kind that starts in your bones. She took one step forward, and then she sang. But before that voice, before that moment cracked the silence, before the applause that would rewrite everything, there was the long hallway to hell that led her here. It started 4 weeks earlier. Avery Coleman had arrived at Hillcrest Academy for the performing arts with 2 pairs of shoes, 1 hand-me-down uniform, and a partial scholarship that her mother called a miracle. It wasn't a miracle. It was earned. Avery had scored off the charts in music theory and vocal placement. The school didn't want her story, though. They wanted her photo for the diversity brochure. Hillcrest sat in the wealthy suburbs of Connecticut, wrapped in ivy-covered stone and 100-year-old pianos. The student body, by contrast, was crisp and cold, like Savannah Blake's voice when she first spoke to Avery during orientation. "Is your mom, like, a celebrity or something?" "No," Avery had replied cautiously. Savannah had blinked. "Oh, then how do you get in?" Avery had smiled. "Talent." Savannah didn't smile back. From day one, Avery learned the rules. Speak softly, walk quickly, stay invisible. She ate lunch near the art wing with her only friend, Maya Ramirez, a bold theater kid with a mouth too fast for her own good and pink hair that had earned her a dozen demerits. Maya was the one who first warned Avery. "Watch Savannah. That girl weaponizes charm." Avery already knew. She had seen the way Savannah could mock a girl's accent 1 second and get a standing ovation from the faculty the next. She came from a family so connected to Hillcrest, they literally built the Blake Performing Arts Center, the same stage where Avery would soon be standing. The setup began innocently enough. A clipboard left on the music room table, a sign-up sheet for the winter showcase, a highlighted box, vocal solo, cultural heritage category. Avery hadn't signed it, but somehow her name appeared on the list. At first, she thought it was a clerical error, until Maya texted her a screenshot. Savannah's Insta story, a blurry photo of the sign-up sheet, a caption. "Excited to hear some spirituals from our favorite charity case." Avery's chest tightened. She marched to Mrs. Whitaker, the head of the vocal department. "I didn't sign up," she said. Mrs. Whitaker gave her a patient, icy smile. "Your name is on the sheet, Miss Coleman." "But it's not my signature." "Are you accusing someone of forgery?" "I'm saying I didn't volunteer." The teacher folded her hands. "Backing out would reflect poorly on your commitment to our values of representation." The trap was already sprung. Later that afternoon, Savannah passed Avery in the hall and dropped her voice low. "We just want to hear something authentic, you know, from your people." Avery turned, heart pounding, and stared at her. "You think this is a joke?" Savannah smiled sweetly. "Number, I think it's a gift. We're giving you a spotlight." That night, Avery came home to the soft hum of her mother, Danielle, boiling pasta after another double shift. Danielle worked full-time at a local hospital and picked up extra cleaning shifts at a law firm on weekends. Avery almost said something. Almost told her mother about the prank, the forged signature, the showcase, but her mother's eyes were heavy. So Avery said nothing. Instead, she closed the bathroom door, turned on the fan, and sang. It was an old hymn her grandmother used to sing. "Wade in the water." Slow and haunting, she let her voice rise, soft at first, then steady, then strong. The walls of the tiny apartment held her sound like sacred space. Her grandmother used to say the bathroom had the best acoustics and the least judgment. Afterward, she stared in the mirror, voice spent, chest rising and falling. They wanted a show. Fine. But she'd choose the song, and the voice, and the truth. The next morning, Mrs. Whitaker handed her a folder. "I selected a more refined piece," she said, tone crisp. "Ave Maria." Avery blinked. "That's not an African-American spiritual." Mrs. Whitaker's smile thinned. "We believe this selection better represents the school's standards." That was the moment Avery understood. They didn't just want her to fail. They wanted her to prove them right. The poor black girl who didn't belong. She walked to rehearsal with the music clutched in her hand, head down. Then she heard a voice behind her. "You'll never hit the G-sharp without support from your diaphragm." She turned. It was Mr. Travis, the janitor. Tall, lean, eyes like tired jazz. He nodded to the sheet music in her hand. "I've heard you humming. You've got lungs, but Ave Maria isn't made for lungs like yours." "You know music?" she asked, surprised. He chuckled. "Taught vocal performance at Juilliard before I taught myself to mop floors." That night, in the darkened music room, Mr. Travis pulled out a faded binder. "If they want spirituals, give them one, but do it your way." Inside was an arrangement of Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. But this wasn't the church version. It had jazz progressions, unexpected phrasing, room for improvisation. It was bold, beautiful, unapologetically black. "They'll hate it," she whispered. He smiled. "Then they'll hear it." They began rehearsing in secret. Each night after cleaning, Mr. Travis stayed late. He taught her breathing, phrasing, control. Not just to sing, but to say something with her voice. Something they couldn't twist or label. She sang not to fit in, but to rise. And when showcase night arrived and Savannah Blake whispered one last insult behind her glossy smile, Avery Coleman didn't blink. Because she remembered the bathroom. She remembered the binder. And she remembered that truth only needs one moment to become unforgettable. She opened her mouth, and everything went quiet. The next morning, Avery Coleman sat in Mrs. Whitaker's choir room, pretending to study the sheet music for Ave Maria. The notes stared back like a threat, high and cold and perfect. She could barely read them without her throat tightening. Her palms were slick with anxiety. "You'll need to extend your breath support," Mrs. Whitaker said from her desk, not looking up. "This piece demands more control than what you demonstrated in your last assessment." Avery didn't respond. She knew it wasn't a critique. It was a warning. As she walked out of the room, she spotted Savannah leaning against the hallway lockers, flanked by her ever-present entourage, Lila, Chloe, and Alexis, the Hillcrest Holy Trinity. Savannah looked up, a gleam of satisfaction in her icy blue eyes. "You know," she said casually, brushing a golden strand of hair behind her ear, "Ave Maria is such a Classic. I thought you'd go with something more rhythmic, something soulful, Lila snorted. Guess even charity cases can appreciate real music. Avery held her gaze. You forged my name. Savannah blinked, then smiled. Excuse me. You put me on that list. Savannah leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Prove it. Avery's heart pounded, but her voice didn't shake. Don't worry, I will. Later that day, she found herself sitting alone in the library's far corner. Even Maya was absent, called away by the drama club to help rehearse a Shakespeare scene. Avery opened her notebook and began copying the notes of the jazz arrangement Mr. Travis had shown her. She didn't notice the librarian walking past her table. She also didn't notice the phone camera poking just above a nearby bookshelf. By lunch, someone had posted a photo of her handwritten music with the caption, "Guess she's still rewriting the classics." That night, Avery found her mother in the kitchen, heating up leftover spaghetti. Danielle Coleman looked more exhausted than usual. Her nurse scrubs were wrinkled, and her hair was pulled back into a loose bun. "You've been quiet lately," she said gently, handing Avery a plate. "Something wrong at school?" Avery hesitated. The words sat heavy on her tongue. Danielle tilted her head. "Avery?" "They want me to sing at the winter showcase," Avery mumbled, "but not something I chose. They're setting me up to fail." Her mother's face tightened. "Who?" "My teacher. Some students. It's all a game to them." Danielle sank into the chair across from her. "Baby, do you want to back out?" "They won't let me." Danielle reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Then you make it yours." Avery looked up. Danielle nodded. "They don't get to choose what you give. They don't get to define your talent. You do." Something shifted inside Avery, a quiet click, like something ancient settling into place. The next morning she found Mr. Travis mopping the front entrance. "I want to do it," she said. He didn't ask what. He just smiled and said, "Come find me at 8." That evening they met in the old theater behind the music wing. It was rarely used now. The lights were dim, the stage dusty, the soundboard ancient. But the acoustics, those were golden. Mr. Travis placed a worn folder on the piano. "We're going to build something they can't ignore." As Avery began her first full rehearsal of Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, jazz style, the room seemed to hum with her grandmother's spirit. The chords were warm, the phrasing alive. Her voice trembled at first, then grew bolder. By the third run, even Mr. Travis nodded with approval. "You've got it," he said. But outside, the wolves were circling. Unbeknownst to Avery, Savannah had gotten hold of a partial recording of one of her early practices, recorded secretly by a student who'd followed her. They edited it, auto-tuned it poorly, and passed it around with the caption, "When talent skips a generation." It was sent to nearly every student inbox by morning. By third period, the halls of Hillcrest buzzed with smirks and whispers. In English class, their teacher, Mr. Ellison, attempted an olive branch. "We'll be looking at modern song lyrics next week. Maybe Avery can help us understand more. Urban selections." Several students laughed. Avery's cheeks burned. She stared down at her desk. After class, Maya caught up to her. "They're scared of you," she said. Avery blinked. "What?" "That's what this is. They see what you're doing and it scares them. You don't fit their version of the story." Avery almost smiled. Almost. Then the call came. Danielle was asked to report to HR at the hospital. Someone had anonymously filed a complaint accusing her of neglecting responsibilities and creating tension with donors. Avery didn't need a transcript to know what that meant. That night, Danielle sat on the couch staring at a letter from her employer. "I might lose one of my jobs," she said softly. Avery's stomach twisted. "Because of me?" Danielle looked up sharply. "Because they don't like seeing us stand tall." Avery clenched her fists. At school the next day, Mr. Travis wasn't at the gate, wasn't in the theater, wasn't anywhere. He'd been suspended. Word had gotten out that he was coaching Avery. Principal Gaines released a statement. Staff must remain within the scope of their employment. They called it policy. Avery called it punishment. That afternoon she found an envelope slipped into her locker. No name. Inside, a photo of her mother cleaning floors, crudely edited with the caption, "Maybe she should sing instead." Avery didn't cry. She didn't scream. She walked to the old theater, alone this time. She placed the sheet music on the stand, and she sang, not to impress, not to belong, to reclaim. As her voice rose, echoing against the old walls, something became clear. This performance would not be about proving her worth. It would be about exposing their fear, and they had every reason to be afraid. Because when truth is set to music, it doesn't just speak, it roars. The door to the old theater creaked open slowly. Avery froze, her hand mid-air above the piano keys. She wasn't supposed to be here, not after Mr. Travis's suspension, not after Principal Gaines made it very clear that any further use of the abandoned space would be considered trespassing. But it wasn't a teacher. It wasn't a student. It was a woman in a dark gray trench coat, heels tapping the hardwood floor with purpose, hair in a sleek updo. She carried herself like someone used to being listened to, confident, grounded, black. "You must be Avery," she said with a half-smile. Avery stood, instantly on guard. "Who are you?" "Serena West, former Hillcrest student, class of 2008. She stepped further in, surveying the dusty rows of empty chairs like a familiar battlefield. Also a Grammy-nominated producer, and, this year, one of the judges for the Winter Showcase. Avery's stomach dropped. "You're judging the showcase?" Serena nodded. Surprised. "I thought Hillcrest only invited their own." Serena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "They think I am. I've spent the last 10 years learning how to make powerful people comfortable enough to forget who I am until it's too late." Avery blinked. "Why are you here?" "Because Mr. Travis called in a favor before they shut him out. He told me about you, and what they're trying to do." Avery's voice trembled. "He's gone. They suspended him." "I know. That's what they do when someone threatens the script." Serena stepped closer. "But we've been rewriting scripts for generations, Avery. You just need the right stage." Avery looked down at her hands. "They're trying to bury me." Serena crouched slightly, locking eyes. "Then it's time to make sure they hear you from underground." She pulled a flash drive from her coat pocket. "This has your accompaniment, professionally produced, layered backing harmonies, custom transitions. It's clean, and it's yours." Avery hesitated. "What if they block it?" "Let them try." Serena stood. "I've got 3 audio techs coming with me. They know exactly how to handle sabotage. Just trust me and be ready." As Serena turned to leave, she paused. "Also, you should know something. You're not the only one they've tried to silence. This school has a long history of it. And we've been watching, gathering." She tossed a folded piece of paper onto the piano bench. A list. Dozens of names. Students, parents, teachers. "We're not just here to see you win, Avery. We're here to see them fall." That night, Avery barely slept. Her mind was a storm, the nerves of performing, the fury of being targeted, the fire lit by Serena's words. She woke early, earlier than usual. Her mother was already dressed, ready to head out for her shift at the hospital. There were new lines around her eyes, etched deeper than any Avery remembered. "You okay, baby?" Avery nodded. Danielle leaned against the doorframe, coffee in hand. "I know this has been a mess. I wish I could protect you from all of it." "You are," Avery said quietly. You always do. Her mother smiled, but her voice caught. No, Avery, this time, you're protecting something bigger than both of us. That afternoon, Avery skipped lunch. She ducked into the school archives instead, a place nobody ever visited. In the back corner of the library basement, past dusty textbooks and forgotten trophies, she found what she was looking for: records of the winter showcase, old programs, black and white photos, newspaper clippings. She opened one from 1967 and froze. There she was, her grandmother, Ruby Morgan, standing at center stage, chin lifted, eyes blazing, in front of a microphone labeled Hillcrest Academy Heritage Fund Concert. But the name of the concert was different back then. Not Winter Showcase. It was called Voices of the Community. Another headline read, Black Students Lead Musical Fundraiser for Scholarships. Her grandmother didn't just sing on that stage, she helped build it. They stole it, renamed it, erased it. Avery's jaw clenched. She took out her phone and snapped every page. When she showed Serena that evening at Harmony Books, a small black-owned bookstore turned community meeting space, Serena whistled. This is gold. They've been erasing our legacy and using our names to fundraise. Around them sat a circle of community members, former Hillcrest students, alumni parents, local musicians, educators. Some older, some young, all listening intently. An older man with a silver beard spoke up. My daughter dropped out sophomore year, said the pressure to conform was like drowning in concrete. Another added, they cut the jazz program the year after I left, said it wasn't aligned with college prep. Avery turned slowly in the circle. They called me a charity case, made fun of my mom, forged my name, changed my performance piece to sabotage me. Serena nodded. And we're going to let the world see it. That night, Avery received a text from Maya. They're giving Savannah the Outstanding Performer Award. It's rigged. They're announcing it halfway through the show so the college scouts can leave early. Avery didn't reply. She didn't need to. They thought they could control the story. But stories told from the center of truth are louder than lies whispered from the edge of power. Tomorrow night, Avery would sing with a new understanding. She wasn't just defending herself. She was carrying generations of silenced voices back into the light. And this time, they would not go quiet. The rain came down in steady sheets the night before the winter showcase. The Hillcrest Academy Performing Arts Center glowed like a lighthouse in the storm, illuminated, elegant, and for Avery Coleman, the belly of the beast. Inside, the final rehearsal was chaos. Students hurried across the stage with gowns and instruments. Technicians shouted over lighting tests. And near the side curtain, Savannah Blake stood like a queen, overseeing her court, crimson dress shimmering beneath the lights. Her lips curled when she spotted Avery walking in. I hope your voice is warmed up, Savannah said coolly, brushing imaginary lint from her sleeve. They say the acoustics are unforgiving. Avery didn't flinch. Guess we'll both find out. Savannah leaned closer. Oh, by the way, they've moved your performance. You're now last, after intermission. Avery blinked. They told me I was 7th. Yeah, well, the program changed, Savannah said sweetly. You know how they want to end strong. Maya rushed up from behind the curtain, her face pale. They just posted the lineup. She's not lying. Avery swallowed hard. They're burying you, Maya said in a whisper. Most of the college reps will be gone by then. Avery stared out at the rows of empty seats. Her chest tightened. They can move me. They can twist the schedule. But they're still gonna hear me. Backstage, Mrs. Whitaker handed out final folders with sheet music and backing tracks for the tech team. When Avery opened hers, her hands froze. Her track, gone. In its place was a single note. Audio file corrupted. Prepare to sing a cappella. She looked up. Mrs. Whitaker wasn't even looking at her. Avery approached. My track. It's missing. Mrs. Whitaker's expression remained neutral. Technical difficulties happen. I hope you've prepared. Avery clenched the folder. You think you're being subtle, but you're not. Mrs. Whitaker finally looked at her, eyes cold. Hillcrest expects excellence, Miss Coleman. If you're not ready, no one forced you to sign up. I didn't sign up, Avery snapped. And yet here you are, the teacher replied, turning away. Avery backed away slowly, heart pounding, rage rising. In the dressing room, her mother waited with a calm that Avery knew was barely holding. Danielle stood in front of the mirror, gently pinning Avery's curls away from her face. I was stopped at the door, she said quietly. Security said I wasn't on the list. What? Avery turned. But you had a ticket? Danielle gave a thin smile. A nice woman in a silk blazer overheard and stepped in, said she was on the board, told them to let me through. Avery blinked. What woman? She didn't say her name, but she had a face like she'd seen more than she ever admitted out loud. Just then, Serena burst into the room, voice low but urgent. You're not gonna believe this. They tried to lock our team out of the sound booth. Avery's eyes widened. Did they succeed? Serena smirked. Not quite. One of my producers sweet-talked the lead tech. We're in, but your slot's confirmed as the closer. They want to make sure the spotlight burns out before you speak. Avery felt her breath catch. Serena moved closer. You have a choice. We can still leak the sabotage, call it out before the show. I've got reporters ready to run with the story. No, Avery said quietly. Not yet. You sure? They need to see it happen, hear it. I want the lie to collapse under its own weight, on stage, in front of everyone. Serena nodded. Then let's make it unforgettable. At 6:45, the audience began to fill in. Donors, parents, local media. The Blake family took their front row seats. Savannah's father, Everett Blake, the school's largest benefactor, whispered confidently to Principal Gaines, who stood with an unnaturally stiff posture. At 7 o'clock sharp, the curtains rose. Avery stood behind the velvet folds, clutching her grandmother's brooch. Maya squeezed her hand once, then disappeared into the wings. The show rolled forward. One by one, students performed. Classical violinists, operatic duets. Polished, stiff, clean. Donors clapped politely. The judges scribbled notes. Serena remained stone-faced. At 8:15, Savannah took the stage. A hush fell. She sat at the grand piano, adjusted the mic, and launched into a piece no one expected. A crude mashup of spirituals, gospel, and blues riffs, but stylized in caricature, overdone swing rhythms, exaggerated inflection, deliberate mimicry. Avery watched in horror. She was mocking everything, every note, every tradition. By the end, some of the audience stood, applauding. Savannah beamed. Then Principal Gaines stepped forward. We don't usually announce awards until the end, he said with a smile. But this year our judges were so impressed, they insisted on early recognition. He turned to the audience. The Outstanding Performer Award goes to Savannah Blake. Applause thundered from the front rows. Savannah stepped forward, wiping a fake tear, and curtsied. Avery stood in the wings, frozen, not from fear, but from something colder. Older, disgust, disbelief. Then the whisper came. She just stole your entire culture, Maya muttered beside her. No, Avery whispered back. She just exposed herself. As the intermission began and guests started trickling toward the lobby, Serena rushed to Avery's side. Half the judges are furious. The other half are playing politics, but cameras are still rolling. Your moment's coming. Avery stepped out into the hallway. She saw her mom across the lobby, surrounded by a few community members who had arrived late but still found seats. A woman Avery didn't recognize handed Danielle a small envelope. She opened it. Inside was a program from 1967, with Ruby Morgan on the cover. Danielle looked up at Avery with tears in her eyes. "Finish what she started," she mouthed. Avery nodded, heart full, spine straightening. The curtain call was announced. It was time. And no matter how much they tried to dim her, the truth was coming. Not whispered, not safe, but sung, bold and untamed, and it would not go unheard. The curtains hadn't even closed before the exodus began. Avery watched from the shadows as the front rows, donors, scouts, alumni with tight smiles, stood, shook hands, and casually made their way to the exits. The announcement of Savannah's award had triggered exactly what Hillcrest planned, a quiet signal that the showcase's highlight had already passed. Her name wasn't even mentioned. "Unbelievable," Maya hissed beside her. "They're cutting your audience in half before you even sing." Avery didn't blink. "Then I'll sing to the half that stays." Backstage, Serena rushed up with fire in her voice. "They tried to pull the plug on your mic. I had to threaten to go live on social if they touched the soundboard again." Avery's nerves were razor sharp, but she kept her voice steady. "Let them try. We've got eyes in the room now." And she was right. While many of the elite families exited the auditorium, a different crowd had started to fill in the empty seats, quietly, purposefully. Former students, local musicians, community leaders. Some wore Hillcrest pins from 20 years ago. Others came dressed in church hats and leather jackets, faces weathered and patient. The ones who'd waited a long time for this moment. Avery stood at the side curtain, holding her sheet music, not the school's assigned Ave Maria, not the forged cultural heritage piece they'd tried to force on her, but her grandmother Ruby's original composition, Unsilenced. Serena's voice was low in her ear. "Just remember, the cameras are still rolling. They can't mute all of us." Across the wings, Principal Gaines stood with arms folded, watching her like a chess piece he couldn't control. Mrs. Whitaker whispered something into his ear. He gave a slow nod and walked off stage. Avery stepped forward. The lights dimmed. A hush fell. The MC returned to the microphone. "Our final performance tonight comes from Avery Coleman. She will be performing." There was a pause, confusion. A glance backstage. Then the MC cleared his throat. "She will be performing a piece of her own choosing." Avery walked into the light. She didn't look at the judges. She didn't look at Savannah, who sat frozen in the front row, expression unreadable. She looked straight ahead, at the darkness where her community sat, the ones who weren't invited but came anyway. The spotlight hit her. She adjusted the mic. Then she paused. "I was told my track was corrupted," she said, her voice carrying evenly across the auditorium. "So I'll be singing without accompaniment. I hope that's acceptable." A few murmurs, one clapping sound from the back. She closed her eyes, breathed in, and began. The first notes were quiet, almost fragile, a melodic line threaded with memory. The lyrics, simple at first, grew in complexity, layering meaning on top of sound. Unsilenced was unlike anything Hillcrest had ever allowed on its stage. It wasn't sanitized or polished, it was raw. Grief twisted into resolve, pain laced with pride. And underneath every note was the voice of Ruby Morgan, a woman silenced in her time, now rising through her granddaughter's breath. Avery reached the chorus. Her voice soared, not pitch-perfect in a technical sense, but alive. It cut through the air like truth does when spoken plainly. And then, twist. Halfway through the performance, as the second verse built, the speakers cracked. The mic flickered. Then, dead silence. Feedback. Static. The sound cut out entirely. For a second, the entire room held its breath. Avery didn't flinch. She kept singing, her voice now unamplified, but stronger, resonating off the walls like gospel sung in a hardwood church. She stepped forward, past the edge of the spotlight. She didn't need the mic. And slowly, one by one, audience members began standing. Not clapping, not cheering, just standing, silent, respectful, bearing witness. Even the judges froze. Serena leaned back in her seat, her arms folded, her eyes glistening. "She's taking it back," she whispered to no one in particular. From the side of the stage, Maya watched in awe. Backstage, Principal Gaines was on the phone, hissing into it, "Get it back online now. I don't care how." But it was too late. Avery's voice filled every inch of that space, and when she reached the final line, "I am not your silence. I am the sound you tried to bury." She held the last note for 6, 7, 8 seconds. When she finished, the auditorium was still, and then the clapping began. Not from the front rows, from the back, then the sides. Then, like a wave, it rolled forward, a standing ovation, except for Gaines, Whitaker, and the Blakes, who remained seated, arms folded, faces tight with fury. Avery bowed once, then stepped off stage. Behind the curtain, Serena met her with an embrace. "You just detonated every lie they built." Avery breathed hard, chest rising and falling. "Now what?" Serena's eyes sparkled. "Now, we watched them scramble." Because somewhere in that crowd, a Hillcrest student had live-streamed the whole thing, and the internet was already deciding who the real performer of the night was. The next morning, Hillcrest Academy woke up to a storm it couldn't contain. By 7 a.m., the performance video had hit 2 million views. By 8 a.m., Unsilenced was trending on every major platform. Clips of Avery's unamplified solo were being shared with captions like, "This girl didn't need a mic to expose an entire system," and "She sang without a mic, but everyone heard her loud and clear." National news outlets picked it up by lunch. Principal Gaines stood in his office, face pale as his assistant frantically tapped away at a tablet. "They're tagging the school account in everything," she muttered. "Students, alumni, faculty, even a few celebrities are chiming in." Gaines yanked the blinds shut. "Get me legal. Now." Meanwhile, Avery sat quietly at her kitchen table, watching her phone buzz like a ticking time bomb. Her mother stood behind her, one hand on Avery's shoulder, the other clutching her coffee mug like it was an anchor. "You sure you're ready for this?" she asked. Avery nodded. "I didn't expect it to happen this fast, but I'm not hiding." The doorbell rang. Serena burst through the front door like a whirlwind, holding up her phone. "Girl, Beyoncé's cousin reposted your video with a quote from Audre Lorde. You broke the internet." Maya followed close behind. "And CNN's reaching out. They want to do a story on the song that shook Hillcrest. You're a headline now." Avery blinked. "I haven't even checked the comments." "Don't," Maya warned. "Half of them are love letters. The other half, people from Hillcrest trying to clean up the mess." Serena scrolled. "Savannah Blake just posted a Notes app apology. Says she regrets her complicity in a system that silences black excellence." Real tearjerker. Avery's jaw tensed. "Complicity isn't a mistake. It's a choice," Serena grinned. "And yours is the one they'll remember." But even with the growing support, the backlash started brewing just as fast. By noon, Hillcrest's board issued a bland, legal-sounding statement. "We are aware of the recent events surrounding our winter showcase and are conducting a full review of procedures and staff conduct." That only poured gasoline on the fire. Former Hillcrest students began sharing their own experiences of bias and erasure. A retired teacher wrote a public letter exposing a pattern of suppressing student-led initiatives by students of color. And then the twist nobody saw coming happened. a former Hillcrest administrator, one who had quietly resigned a year ago, came forward on video. Gray hair, calm voice, no theatrics, just the truth. "I was part of the problem," she said. "I stayed silent while brilliant young black students were pushed aside, their ideas dismissed, their voices quieted. What happened to Avery Coleman was not an accident. It was policy, and it's been happening for years." The clip went viral instantly. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a showcase. It was about a system. Avery's inbox flooded with interview requests, messages from advocacy groups, and offers from record producers. She ignored most of them. Instead, she wrote a statement of her own. Not a PR-crafted apology. Not a rebuttal. Just her words. "My song was not an audition. It was a declaration. I am one of many voices that have been told to wait their turn. I'm not waiting anymore." She posted it without hashtags, without fanfare, and it spread like wildfire. Later that night, as the sun dipped behind the city skyline, Avery and her mom sat on their building's rooftop. Serena and Maya had joined them, all huddled in blankets, watching the notifications light up the screen like fireflies. "Do you think they'll expel me?" Avery asked, the first trace of fear in her voice. Her mother didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Maybe. Or maybe they'll offer you an award to save face. Either way, you already won." Maya nodded. "You turned a stage built to silence you into a platform for truth. They can't unhear what you sang." Avery looked out into the night, the city alive below her. She hadn't planned this. She hadn't rehearsed for viral fame. But she had told the truth, and people had listened. What came next? She didn't know. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of what was coming. She was ready for it. The morning after the video hit national headlines, Hillcrest Academy announced an emergency school assembly. Mandatory, no exceptions. Whispers rippled through the student body. Rumors swirled. Some said Principal Gaines was resigning. Others claimed the entire music department was being shut down. Avery walked the hallway with Maya and Serena by her side, the air around her heavier than usual, eyes on her from every direction. But no one dared whisper today. Inside the auditorium, the air buzzed with tension. The same room that had once muted Avery's voice now echoed with anticipation. The stage was stark, no lights, no props, no decorations. Just a microphone on a stand. Avery, clutching her notebook, sat in the front row, surrounded by faculty and students. She'd been personally invited to attend, though no one had told her why. Principal Gaines walked onto the stage. His suit looked more wrinkled than usual. His eyes were red-rimmed, not from crying, but from a war of emails, calls, and boardroom interrogations. He approached the mic slowly. "There's no easy way to begin," he said, voice raspy. "What happened last week during the winter showcase was more than a technical mishap. It was a failure of leadership, and it exposed deeper issues, ones that have existed at this school far too long." A few murmurs passed through the crowd. "We allowed a culture of favoritism, of exclusion, and in doing so we failed our students, especially our students of color." Avery's heart raced. She didn't trust him yet. But this wasn't the speech she'd expected. "Effective today," he continued, "Ms. Dalloway has been removed as head of the music department." A stunned gasp swept the room. Students turned to one another in disbelief. Avery's grip tightened on her notebook. An independent review of Hillcrest's performance practices has also begun. We're committing to structural changes, not just statements. We are forming a student advisory council, led by Avery Coleman. Avery froze. Maya whispered, "Did he just say your name?" Serena nudged her. "Get up there." Avery stood, legs trembling. She hadn't prepared a speech. She hadn't planned to speak at all. But as she climbed the stairs, the crowd's silence met her like a warm current. not cold this time. Expectant, respectful. She reached the mic, swallowed. "My name is Avery Coleman," she began, "and for most of this school year I felt invisible, like my voice didn't belong in these halls. But last week when I sang, really sang, I wasn't trying to be heard. I was trying to remind myself that I still had something to say." Her eyes swept the crowd. Some faces nodded, some bowed in guilt, and some, surprisingly, smiled. "This isn't just about music. It's about equity, about not having to shout to be taken seriously, about not having to be exceptional to be treated fairly." She paused, then added softly, "But also about knowing your worth, even when no one else sees it." She stepped back. The silence that followed was heavier than applause. It was reverent. And then it came. First, a single clap, then another. Then all at once, a standing ovation. After the assembly, Miss Dalloway stormed through the hallway, her office box in hand. Her face was stone, but her eyes flickered with something Avery didn't expect. Reluctant acknowledgement. Not quite respect, but no longer denial. She passed Avery without a word. Outside the school gates, Avery was met by local reporters. But before they could ask anything, a black SUV pulled up. Out stepped a tall man in a charcoal suit, his posture precise, energy calm but powerful. "Ms. Coleman," he asked, "my name is Anthony Rhodes. I work with the National Youth Arts Council. We'd like to speak with you about a special initiative." Avery blinked. "Me?" "You've sparked something," he said. "We think your voice could do even more, if you're willing." She exchanged glances with Maya and Serena. Maya mouthed, "Say yes." But Avery didn't answer yet. Not out of fear, but because for the first time in her life, she realized she had the luxury of choosing. She smiled slowly. "Let's talk." That evening, Hillcrest's campus felt different. Walls that had once echoed with unseen biases now held new energy. Students stopped Avery in the hallway, not just to praise her performance, but to ask questions, to talk, to listen. The change was quiet, but it was happening. Back home, she sat by the window, notebook open on her lap, pen poised. The last line she wrote read, "I thought they silenced me, but all they did was give me a reason to be louder." 2 weeks had passed since the showcase. Avery's world had changed, but not in the ways she'd expected. Yes, she'd been offered interviews, scholarships, even a music label meeting. But that wasn't what stuck with her. What stayed with her was the message from a 7th-grade girl at a public school across town. "I watched your video. I'm black too. I never thought someone like me could sing like that on a stage like that. You made me want to try." That was the moment Avery knew it was never about revenge. It was about resonance. She stood in front of the Hillcrest Auditorium once again, this time not as a silenced voice, but as the head of the newly formed Student Arts Council. The room buzzed, not with judgment but excitement. Real energy. Diverse faces sat in every row, students who had never been chosen, never been given a mic, and today they would take the stage. As she adjusted the mic, Avery looked out into the crowd. Serena stood in the wings, headset on, running sound and lights like a pro. Maya held a clipboard, cueing acts backstage, her usual sarcasm replaced by a rare stillness. They were building something together now, something that would outlast applause. "Thank you for coming," Avery said into the mic. "Tonight's not a showcase, it's a reclaiming. This stage doesn't belong to one voice anymore. It belongs to all of us." The lights dimmed and the first act stepped onto the stage, a shy Filipino boy with a ukulele. Avery slipped off to the side and exhaled. For the first time, she wasn't nervous. She was proud. But just as she was about to head backstage, she was stopped by a familiar voice. "Impressive speech." She turned around. Miss Dalloway stood there, not in her usual prim attire, but in jeans and a sweater. No clipboard, no glare. "I didn't expect to see you here," Avery said coolly. "I didn't expect to come," Dalloway admitted. "But I watched. Every post, every statement. I realized I taught notes, not voices. I didn't listen." Avery raised an eyebrow. "And now? I'm not here for redemption," she said. "Just recognition. You changed more than this school. You changed me." It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't nothing. Avery nodded once. "We're full for the lineup, but you're welcome to listen." Dalloway smiled faintly. "That's what I'm finally learning how to do." Later that night, after the final act, a group of immigrant girls singing in 5 different languages, the entire auditorium erupted in applause. The walls of Hillcrest Academy, once so pristine and cold, now vibrated with warmth. Backstage, Avery grabbed her phone. Her inbox was a flood of new messages again. Parents, local news, even a student from Kenya who said she'd shared Avery's story in her class. She opened her video app, hit record, and looked directly into the camera. "There was a time when I thought silence was safety, that blending in was easier than standing out. But then I stood on a stage with no mic, and somehow the truth got louder. And now, I don't just sing for myself, I sing for every kid who's ever been told, 'Wait your turn,' or 'Not you.' Because we've waited long enough." She paused, then added with a smile, "If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been told you weren't enough, then join us. Share this. Support the voices that still haven't been heard, and if you want more stories like this, real, raw, and powerful, subscribe to the channel, because we're just getting started." She hit upload. The night faded into morning, but Avery knew this wasn't the end. It was a new verse in a much bigger song, and this time the world was listening.